Hi, everybody. If you can go to week 13 through 15 presentations, and you will have to you available the introduction to that text that I was talking about mothers in children's and young adult literature.
So this is supposed to be like our example for the...
But yours will be shorter. Yes. That's what it looks like.
I saw the word Adderall. No, that's not easy.
Maybe.
Controlled substance, man. I need that. Some coffee. Bread.
So that you can, Emily, when you talked to me today, how did you describe that one text you were looking at?
It was the best of journals for rhetoric and composition, and basically what it was is they had compiled together all of the best articles that discuss rhetoric and composition, and then they used the introduction to talk about why this conversation is important, why these articles have something to say about rhetoric and composition, and why it's important to discuss and educate ourselves with these articles, what they have to offer for the conversation. And then that led into the different sections. So they divided like a set of articles on just how they focused on pedagogy. And then another set was compiled in some other, I don't remember what it was, but they compiled them in like 3 different sections and then discussed from there what those pieces had to say about this section and how they were related.
And that's what you'll be doing. She said it beautifully. I couldn't have said it any better.
Just on a much smaller...
Just on a much smaller scale. Because you're not really going to put together an edited collection.
Okay, and then we're going to have to present on our edited collections. Is that what our presentations are? I'm trying to think ahead on that because I will probably not be here at that point.
Very possible.
So,
yeah, because that's
that's the week. The first presentation week is the week I'm planning to evict this child.
calling in the sheriff. Serving a warrant.
So I'll try to have all that turned in by Monday.
Well, I think that's one of those instances where we can do an incomplete if you need to.
I'm hoping I don't need that, but we shall see how that works.
Yeah. So take a look. This is a really interesting introduction anyway. So go ahead and take a look at it and see what you can see. I made notes on it because I was writing a review article on it. You won't need notes. So let's go over the assignment.
Okay, so on the works cited, are you wanting us to organize it by section, like how we would organize it within the edited collection?
Mm-hmm. Except it's not, I mean, it's not exactly a works cited,
Well,
but it's the table of contents.
okay.
Yeah.
Are we married to these? I mean, if we find something better, can we still change after that next week's assignment?
Mm-hmm.
That's typically what happens to me anyway.
Yeah, me too.
Just gone right past it. I did. All right. So your table of contents is what's going to come first. And in this, you can see the contents. You don't need acknowledgments unless you want to say, I thank you, Dr. Stewart, for being the best ever. You don't have to. Or you can dedicate it to your spouse or your cat or dog or children
Or cheeky.
cheeky. Yeah. So yours is the introduction. You can see this one's separated into, I think it's actually separated into more than 2 parts. It is, maybe 3 or 4. I just didn't include those pages. So you go ahead and label it chapter 1, and then you give.
Are you wanting us to write it like that as far as article title and then author, or do you want us to do like a bib entry?
Like a bib entry. Divide the collection Oh, hold it. This says list the title of each article and the author. We'll come back to that in just in a minute and see. Divide the collection into 2 or 3 parts. Situate your collection in such a way that you demonstrate that you're contributing something new to the conversation about this topic. So just by the very nature of putting this particular collection together in conversation with them, you are doing that. So you might have to push it a little bit and stretch it a little bit, but you can, that's what you're getting this degree for. Be able to push it and stretch it. It's a yoga class. Demonstrate a broad understanding of scholarship and theories concerning the topic you've identified. So if you're talking about LGBTQ stuff, then you would offer an overview of perhaps some of the seminal texts in children's, young adult, and adolescent novels. So, you know, Kenneth Kidd was one of the first to start talking about queering children's, young adult, and adolescent literature. One of the first, so you'd probably discuss him. You can pick all of this up probably from the articles that you read. Most of it should be embedded in there. Reflect an understanding of what constitutes rigorous scholarship. No articles less than 10 pages. Try to avoid articles found in education journals, though children's literature and education is an exception. Rely mainly on journals and edited collections that deal with literary analysis of texts rather than reader response and how to use the text in the classroom. Demonstrate evidence of a close and careful reading and understanding of the chosen scholarship. Be written in a sophisticated style similar to other published collections. Include meticulous documentation. And then you're going to, so you'll have your table of contents. Then you will have a list of you annotate those articles in the order of your table of contents. So you have to think about how you want to place those too. So if you were doing historical stuff and something else, you'd probably start the first section would probably be some kind of historical treatment of whatever. So the first page, I didn't mention this, but try to come up with a catchy name for your edited collection. So if I were going to follow up on the Panopticon and children's literature, I might call it "I'm Watching You." The Panopticon and children's and adolescent literature. I mean, that's okay. Or watch out. The annotations, like I said, they're in order of the table of contents that you list. And these are in lieu of including the articles for me to look at. So I just read your annotations and I should get a sense of what this collection is about, aside from reading your introduction, and see how everything fits together. And then identify the argument, identify anything you believe significant for this collection in the articles for your annotations. So where are your questions here? Oh man, it's so nice to say, what are your questions? And you don't ask. So is this an edited collection and we're writing everything? Because that's my freshman. That's why I'm needing my anxiety pills. Anti-anxiety.
So we have our 3,000 word introduction, and then we have
The annotations.
the annotations for each article
Yeah.
after that.
And that annotation will have your bibliographic information.
Okay, so
In the table of contents, it will have the author, or the title of the article or chapter, and the author's name. And you'll put those in order.
and then
And then the next part
is the introduction,
is the introduction.
and then the last part, instead of just a works cited, it's an annotated then.
Mhm.
Okay, and it's in the order of the chapters.
Mm-hmm. It makes pretty good sense when you get that overall vision. 3 parts.
Okay, so then our introduction isn't necessarily including like annotations of the articles.
Mm-mm.
Our introduction is just,
Your introduction is to situate. Do exactly what you said about that other journal.
Question about, so the introduction, what about, do we need a separate works cited if, like, I wanted to have a separate discussion of ideology
Mhm.
in there? So if I'm citing an article that helps with that understanding, but I didn't necessarily include it in the edited collection, where do I give them?
That comes right after your introduction, as if you're writing a paper.
Okay, gotcha.
Let's see what they did on
So
this.
that'll actually be, so it'll go table of contents, introduction, works cited for the introduction, then the edited collection bib.
Yeah, you can see how this one, this is exactly how it would go. I don't anticipate you needing to do notes.
Oh.
But so it's the notes, and then there's the works cited.
Okay.
But
And then part 1, and you title it, you identify what that part 1 is about. Feeling okay about it?
we only need to worry about including a work cited though if we're citing a work that's not in the edited collection. Is that correct? Or do
No, you should have a works cited period.
Okay.
If anything, I mean, you don't have to, if you're citing from if you're
Like if we're quoting from.
If you're
something.
quoting from one of your articles saying, in so-and-so, and this is to begin this collection, so-and-so identifies blah, blah, blah.
So then
She explains that and she quotes. I don't think you would need to do that then, because you'll have it.
Have the information.
Mhm. Yeah, that'll be in your, something.
So it's still works cited only if we quote from something other than the 10 articles that are in our edit.
But you really should quote from some other materials.
Right, but that's where we would include that.
Mhm.
We don't.
Maybe say scholar from this, from part 1 of the edited collection
Mhm.
has this to say about.
Yeah, so you can see here, part 1 concludes with the romance of other mothering in 19th century backfish books by Julie Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer explores the uneasy balance in these novels between what Nancy Chodorow calls the reproduction of mothering and what Patricia Hill Collins calls other mothering. Now, they didn't put page numbers there, but that's from Pfeiffer's article or chapter. Okay, so here, well, you can see next in Juliana Ewing's 6 to 16, Realizing and Rewriting Maternal Legacy, Cone Kim explores how Juliana Ewing both establishes and interrogates the maternal legacy of her mother, Margaret Gatty, through the intertextual relationship of her novel 6 to 16, that's written in 1875, with Gatty's allegorical story, The Fairy Godmothers. Ewing points to the restrictions of the Victorian domestic ideology that limit the fulfillment of her mother's legacy, namely, now where did the page number go? Attitudes toward mothers and from the revered old Stone Age mom.
There's also a 10 on the right in the middle.
Yeah, right there. See, you won't actually have your own page numbers. The page numbers will be whatever is listed on the articles. So you could have two different articles that have a page 235. So you wouldn't be able to put those page numbers in. It wouldn't make complete sense. But it should be pretty clear that you're using the articles in the edited collection, the collection that you put together, and that it's not something outside that helps you situate, contextualize.
And if it is something outside, we have to make sure we cite it properly. And that goes right after the introduction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, as if it's part of the essay, because it is.
All right, that's clear as mud.
How's everybody doing in streaming? Any questions? Got it? Good. All looks well?
All looks
Making
good until
some
we
kind
dive
of
into
sense.
it.
I know. So you don't want to do that the day before, obviously.
Yeah, that'll be.
And
I'll be getting into it, and then I'll have a question, and then I'll barrage you with emails.
yeah. I've got 2 more essays to grade, or 2 more of the whatever it was you turned in.
If I were to.
Yes. Thank you. We have to figure out what to do for one crazy summer.
Yeah, I was trying to look ahead to see if there's any articles for me to print. I'm like, there's nothing in any of these.
Mm-mm.
Because this is also concerning the lesser known side of Black Panthers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is very much. And it depicts the sister's mother, and she is part of the Black Panthers, kind of slightly unwillingly. They kind of force her into doing some work for them. And then
I wonder if we could look into like, maybe like gender roles within the Black Panthers, because it's something that the Vanguard of the Revolution touched on
mm-hmm.
a little bit, that like the males had all the power and the girls were like relegated to the kitchen of the party, kind of. They were told like, you're going to sit here and answer the phone, kind of like.
Yeah, they're the
what
ones
happened
fixing
to
breakfast.
Maxie.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what all women were regulated to, that, still in the 60s.
So
I also saw an author that wrote on the Black Panther Party who ended up in trouble with the FBI. He wrote
That
a book.
Austin guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched that video too. To
yeah.
TikTok.
But he was saying that there was a lot of women that were actual leaders, even though they were subjugated to these roles, they were leaders of the party.
That
because
there was
the
like
men
a greater
had been in
number of
trouble.
women
Yeah.
to men ratio. Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
There
Mm-hmm.
was some guy that they said was in power that was kind of chauvinist. And so to counter that, they gave the women the guns and then the men served breakfast.
I saw that, yeah.
Well, I do have some of you mentioned videos and documentaries and things like that. And so we'll be looking a little bit at those too as we go on. I found the one that you were talking about. And we'll look at those and kind of get a broader view. How many of you ever heard about the Black Panthers? Is this your first time or
I
you
had heard about them, but I had always just, growing up, thought that they were just a group of violence. Because when I was a kid, we had a lot of black church burnings in the Greenville area. And so the new Black Panther Party came to town, and I was like, 8. I was like, oh my God, But so I learned a lot about the whole encompassment of the party doing this. I was like, I didn't know they do a lot of the social works that they talked about doing. I just thought it was people with guns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd heard about it, but I was so misinformed.
Yeah. Well, that's that.
They did that on purpose.
That's those counter narratives that we're talking about, that we've been talking about through the class.
J. Edgar Hoover did well.
Man, have you seen the films with what was the last one on him, on J. Edgar Hoover? I don't remember. I don't know, but whoever did Cheney, that was an amazing film. Anybody watch that one?
I don't watch a lot of biopics.
Well, it's not violent.
No,
He was vice president.
I know.
I mean, he did
shot somebody.
He did shoot somebody, but
Totally on accident, I'm sure.
it was not,
He knew he wouldn't die. It was buckshot.
exactly. But I mean, the actor in that is amazing. But I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I'm pretty sure I've seen a J. Edgar Hoover movie.
I know there's one. I know there's one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and he was amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, I was totally convinced. I don't know how I got there.
You were
brought
talking
it
about
up. Counter narratives, yeah. So the counter narratives are recently new. A lot of it's been told. Historical fiction is a really good spot for counter narratives to take place, because historical fiction is typically portrayed white heroes of some sort, or some kind of white plight, where hero comes through and saves the day in some way or another, whether female or male, and it ignores people of color and everybody else. Sometimes the older stuff, of course, ignores gender, so that there's apparently women didn't exist or something. Who knew?
People just spontaneously
burst forth. They got eviction notices, and that's how it happened. Here.
Yep. You were no longer welcome.
So these counter narratives are forms of resistance, and they're frequently written by, like, One Crazy Summer is written by a Black author, I think. No, or is it Garcia?
I don't remember.
Is she
I think
Latinx?
it's Garcia.
She's Latinx. Yeah. And then, but the novels, it's giving voice to people who have previously been silenced. And that's that. Taking a different perspective than the traditional white top-down. Children's lit tends to be bottom up from children's point of view, but they've been white children for forevermore. And then a lot of them, white characters save the Black characters, the people of color, the characters of color, because, oh, I don't know. The last one, and it's an old one, it's the Northern Light or something like that. I think it's by Lasky. And it's the story of a young slave, a young Black slave girl escaping from plantation and horrible treatment. And guess who helps? The plantation owner's daughter. Yeah, white. Can I play privilege? Yeah, at least she's female. There's that part. So if not for her help, she wouldn't make it. Because, incapable apparently of making it. So that's kind of the old narrative. And now, from the books that I've chosen for this semester, you're getting a lot of different counter narratives. And especially with the Civil Rights Movement and with Black Panthers, those two put together. Hi, all those of you that just came in. Be sure to listen to the beginning of, hi. Hi, Katie. Hi, Katie's little one. Hi. Be sure to listen to the beginning of it, because I explained the edited collection in more detail. So that should help you. And instead of putting your posts or your assignment into a PowerPoint like I usually do, I put it into a Word document because some of them were so long that I just keep going from PowerPoint to slide to slide to slide. So I just put it all together in one document.
Well, but like with everyone not reading the same thing or looking at the same thing, you have to provide some background.
Yes,
so
yeah.
It's going to make it longer.
And all of us be thinking about what to do with One Crazy Summer.
I kind of like to find something and then do a projected question on it.
You do?
I like the combination of the two.
What did you guys think about that on streaming? Were you good with it?
I thought it was very
Because-
interesting to get like a combination view.
Good. Okay, that's what we'll do again. Easy enough. Although, will you be able to find more stuff? What will you look at?
So to say, like, I'm fixing to cover a lot of things right now. So, like, if I didn't read the same thing that Shay read, could I go back and read it and tie it into One Crazy Summer since they're both Black Panther?
Mm-hmm.
We pull ideas from each other like that.
Because I did a video, but then I also mentioned an article underneath that I didn't get to finish. It was 39 pages, so I read like 10. So, I'll pull it back.
Somebody gave me 3.
There was a lot. There were several different videos, because the video that I tagged was actually just an old interview from way back in the day. And I saw a lot of those, and I actually watched several of them.
Mhm.
And it really kind of brought to mind the what they were really after, not necessarily what we had been taught that they were after. And so it was pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not close to what. I mean, there was that part, but there was it was as though there was, it was presented as
All they-
uncontextualized, in that you're just violent people. We just can't have that.
Who's walking around with guns? Can you believe that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Open carry.
It is kind of weird, though, to see people carrying guns legally in some of these, because, you know.
Well, I mean, the we've kind of, if you follow any kind of open carry law, I live in the country now, so that's why I know. You see a lot more of that now again.
Mhm.
You see a lot of, I mean, not necessarily big old rifles all the time, but you see a lot more open carry than you used to.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't so much of a shock to me.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I mean, but facing police.
Oh yeah,
That's
that-
what was kind of
that
unnerving.
scene in the book, that I was all like, oh my God, someone's gonna die.
Yeah, and you knew somebody was going to die when the gun ended up in the
tower.
Yeah,
tower,
Yeah.
and then in the
in the glove box.
glove box.
Yeah, I just saw that kind of.
I think it was Dostoevsky that said, if you're going to use a
If there's a gun in Act 1, somebody's gonna be dead in Act 3.
otherwise, it's not been done well. That everything counts. There's no such thing as just setting. Who said what?
It was Chekhov's gun.
What did you say, Jeremy?
Sorry, it's Chekhov's
Oh,
gun.
it's Chekhov's gun. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, because in a play, you know, especially a play like that, it would be, everything needs to have meaning to
It
it.
needs to be circular.
Yeah, and it needs to contribute to the plot or characterization or something. It needs to contribute. So, sticking that,
And then it
Gun.
not even being loaded. That's what got me.
yeah.
No, I just wanted to punch Stick in the nose for bringing it into his brother's room in the first place.
Yeah, what was he
His
thinking?
13-year-old brother, what are you doing?
Well, you know, not thinking.
No.
That's what teenagers
He
do.
was
Right.
17, 18.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah.
And these kids are growing up really fast at this very point, especially Stick.
At the same time, they still don't. They just don't know.
They don't know.
Well, yeah, no, he put it in his waistband and then left the house with it. And that's when I was like,
Oh, this is going to go so terribly wrong.
But the alternative was him showing his father,
Right.
like, right before they went on this peaceful protest. Like, I don't think it would have been quite so peaceful at my house when that happened.
Yeah.
You know?
But at the same time, part of me was all like, just tell him. Right, well, because Stick's already out of the house anyway. What's he going to do?
They know it can't be Sam's gun. Where's Sam gonna get it?
Mhm.
Like,
Sam's the good kid.
well, and knowing what happens after, it would have been a lot better for his dad to find out. Because at that point, he would have taken
And
the
ask
gun
if
out.
it would have been nothing.
And of course, the
yeah,
story
no.
would have ended then.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, it wouldn't have ended then because there was much more to go.
Right.
They had to accomplish a great deal more. Yeah. Hi, Daisy. As I said to the others, be sure to listen to the beginning of the, what is that thing that I post? Is it a video? I don't know. I call it the wrong thing sometimes. Because I explained the edited collection a little bit more. So if you have questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So what did you think about the novel in general?
I ugly cried at this book.
For real,
The
ugly
last time
cry.
I cried like that in a book was Out of Darkness.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I had tears on my book and I closed it and I was like, I start reading it in a minute.
It was a hard one. Yeah. I think Out of Darkness is harder because both died.
Yeah.
But
I almost expected something to happen to Sam, too.
But it was so well written and playing with your emotions, like after he dies and he thinks he hears him tapping on the window. It's like,
Yeah, I was driving down the road and listening to it, and the reader is a stunning reader. Did you listen to it?
No, I read it and it is quite different listening to it and then reading to it.
Yeah.
Reading it on your own.
Yeah, and I was trying not to cry because I didn't need to have tears in my eyes while I'm driving 75 miles on the highway.
Yeah.
It just isn't really conducive to safe driving. But and I was just, no, and I had blocked it. I'd listened to it twice before, and I blocked it, the stick dice. I guess it's just too much for me. I know I teach these.
Because you want to share in the misery.
Yeah, because they're really important. But our next one's going to be much more fun. I mean, it has its moments, but it's better.
It's lighter.
Yeah, it's very lighthearted. Different age group entirely.
For sure.
Of,
sure.
Of course.
I read it for the first masters.
I was like,
I know.
and it's a pretty fast read.
Yeah, I enjoyed
Well,
it.
this one I managed to read with, I split it up. I read one half one evening and one half the other evening before bed, but, it wasn't a difficult read. I think I had the total was like maybe 4 hours. So,
Yeah. Somebody had noted in their in their assignment about how kids were the ones to be at the front, didn't realize that so many young people populated the Black Panthers. Is anybody in class, did you write that? I can't remember. But that was the case for the civil rights movement too. It wasn't parents who were marching, it was kids who were marching.
the kids are typically, or the youth are typically the ones in my observation and my own youth that tend to see where things need to change, and then they take the action need to change. Because once you become adults, sometimes the status quo is the status quo.
And on top of that, parents cannot get arrested or they won't have any money coming in. And if the kids get arrested, well, they do. And that's what Martin Luther King did. So, okay, if he could do it, so can our kids. And the chances are less likely, although they still occur, that that people would do bodily damage to the children. But they did, of course.
Of course, it didn't matter.
It didn't. It did, but it didn't. So that was part of it. And that youthful, I was driven by justice when I was a kid. Not all kids are.
Invincible too. You have that
Oh,
youthful
yeah.
invincibility. So you think nothing can happen to you.
Well, Stick surely thought that. He really did.
Which is interesting because he thought that about himself. He did not think that about Sam though.
Right.
No.
He had to protect Sam. Sam's not invincible, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, yes.
I like the character of Sam, and to me, he's somehow adorable because I think as a 14 years old boy, he is very thoughtful. He is struggling with his self-identity, and throughout the course of the novel, we see he tries to develop a sense of self. It is not easy for him to choose between the rock and the river. So on one hand, we see he wants to respect his father's ideas, to follow him, to follow his peaceful demonstration. But on the other hand, he gets familiar with the Black Panther Party, and he sees that this party is seeking radical changes. But he notices that his father's movement is somehow kind of slow. It doesn't make the required changes for the betterment of the Black people's lives quickly enough. So he decides to, at the end, he decides to join the Black Panther Party. So between the rock and the river, in fact, he chooses to be the river, but not the rock, because the rock reminds us, it kind of symbolized, the rock symbolized as being scared, inactive, or kind of resistance to radical changes. But when we think about the river, river symbolizes being in progress. So if he chooses to be the river, it means that it means you have to go for whatever you believe believe me.
Mhm.
And I like his character among all those characters.
I did like
because
that
of
character development.
Yeah,
his character development.
I was upset when he first, I wanted him to testify, although I knew that was going to be a problem at some point. It just would be.
He was very influenced by Maxie,
Yes.
so that was a big effect on him.
Yeah.
He's a teenage boy though.
I was like,
That's
all boys are influenced by their love interests.
Yeah.
He reminded me a lot of Justice. Like,
Yes.
His struggle,
Yes.
that entire story reminded me a lot of Justice. It was
I
just
agree.
him battling between, do I fight or do I just shut up and listen, do it a different way?
I like that struggle between, am I like my father, or am I going to be like my brother? Because, they're both such important influences to him. And then, so I really liked that duality there. And then at the end, realizing that he's got to come from the middle, basically, and for himself
Mm-hmm.
at that point.
And in both, also the the girlfriend was very influential.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Miss Jetty.
How about you guys who are streaming in? What would you like to say about it?
Honestly, that I liked the way that Maxie was portrayed, because a lot of the time you think, okay, it's the 60s. She's supposed to be this little housewife that is just calm and mild-mannered and everything like that, but she's the one that kind of is the influence, not so much Stick, but it's more Maxie that influences Sam to join the Panthers. She was the first one to run over on the night that they went to the meeting to sign the join-up sheet and everything. And
Signed all of them.
she signed all the sheets. And then at the demonstration, she's standing there dressed in the battle-ready stuff just like everybody else is. She's in the beret, she's in the hat, she's in the black shoes, she's in everything that one of the soldiers, quote unquote, wears. She's in the uniform.
Yep.
So she's not some office worker, she's not some housewife, she's in the action, and I loved that because it's so atypical for that time period.
Mm-hmm. And then the role that she plays in testifying at trial.
Mm-hmm.
I found it interesting that she went first. Testifying.
Well, and even though she played such an integral role, and it implies that her testimony is almost as important as Sam's, even though Sam comes from a better family. Whenever they go to get Bucky out, she's relegated to the house to make the phone calls. You're not important enough to go on this.
Well, but at the same time, though, after the incident with the police, after they get pulled over, they had I can't remember who it was. It might have been Leo Rare. He said that they expected something to happen, but they didn't expect something to happen so
That
quickly.
soon.
So that might be one of the reasons they left Maxie behind.
And you have to remember that they had the rifles in the trunk, so they were already prepared for something to happen because they knew that they weren't going to let them just take Bucky.
Right.
But the officer who said that, who was interviewing Sam, said that they were in the back seat and they weren't. They were in the front.
They were.
Right. But
They
that
were
was,
needling him.
they were trying to lead him in questioning, and that's
And Sam wasn't about to burst.
he was gonna.
He was this close.
I
He heard his daddy outside.
I would have been the same way, though. I'd be crying.
Oh, are you kidding?
At
At that age, I would, because I'm susceptible to, I was really susceptible to authority figures, because I was a good girl and obeyed the rules, and for the most part, those rules mattered to me. So, yeah, I wouldn't have held out for 2 minutes.
No.
Maxie was.
You also have to realize that Sam has just come from watching his big brother die into this interview.
And they use that.
And they use it.
Oh,
that made me so mad. That he's on the ground with the knee in his back, pleading to go to his brother, and they don't let him move. Oh, that made me so mad. Maybe
Well, and during that period, there was an absolute, there was no trying to get along racially with police, and especially not in the South, because you have George Wallace doing his stuff, feeding into an environment that encourages that kind of behavior from the police. And you've got Bull Connor, who's the one that drove around in the tank downtown Birmingham, and the one that, you know, was making sure that that they had the fire hoses out, spraying everybody down, that they had the dogs out and attacking the kids. And all of this, I mean, it would be, if one of the police wanted to reject that police officer probably would not be well received by his.
They would end up being targeted.
Yeah, yeah.
So even if you were sympathetic to the cause, you
You
couldn't
couldn't
act
really
on
do
it
anything.
because you're going against the status quo.
Right. And that was a very powerful status quo in the South at that point. Very powerful. I mean, they didn't even arrest the men that set the bombs at the 16th Avenue Baptist Church in Birmingham until decades later. And they knew who it was that did it. They didn't have the evidence, but they knew who it was that did it. And they finally gathered enough evidence. If you ever get the chance to watch it, watch Four Little Girls, a Spike Lee film. It's really, really moving. And it discusses the four little girls and everything leading up to their deaths, and it interviews their parents and neighbors and relatives. And I fell in love with some of them. And, you know, the pain was so very evident. And there's George Wallace in there at the end of it. He's coming out, and George Wallace was, he experienced an assassination attempt. And I think it put him in I think it was that put him in the wheelchair. And he later backtracked on his philosophies regarding race, supposedly. And so he's got his caretaker is a black man. Oh, come on over here. He's my best friend. Yeah, he takes care of me. I take him everywhere. That's kind of, you know, he's got this big old fat cigar. And
so ridiculous.
I know, it was really awful. And that's what they, you know, that's what he was doing. But he was instigating the violence as much as anybody. Wow. And you know, the speeches that he made at the steps saying segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And that was, you know, that was his motto. And the people of the South followed that a great deal. So this is the environment in which this kind of violence and this kind of conflict happens so easily, and so much fear on everybody's part. On everybody's part.
I thought also they used Maxie's class to circumstances too. She had a more favorable opinion of Black Panthers because she started to do them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and her brother was.
Right, right. And she went to the breakfasts.
Mm-hmm.
And she was more motivated for change because she had, I mean, not only racial problems, but just her life circumstances. She was more hungry for change too. So I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, more motivated for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and having her, I mean, oh gosh, when Sam said those things to her.
Oh my gosh.
I was
I'd
cringing.
kill them.
I was just cringing the entire time. But having Sam from this family is really naive. I don't know when Stick became less naive when he started understanding about the Panthers, when he got drawn into the Panthers. But
Well, his best friend, Bucky, he comes from a much less affluent, obviously.
mm-hmm,
And so I'm sure that influenced him a great deal.
mm-hmm,
Because we see that memory from Sam where Bucky came in that one night that Dr. King was there and he had the literature with him.
mm-hmm.
So I'm
He
sure
had,
that
like,
was,
from the California area.
so I'm sure that was probably a significant influence
Yeah.
on Stick.
And Sam didn't have those friends, didn't have those same friends to
And then with
expose him.
the
to
last little
Panthers.
bit of a push that Stick needed was Bucky getting arrested after being beaten with an inch of his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that,
You know, it kind of, when that all happened with Bucky and the dad's friends came in and we're talking about how it was because it happened because Bucky had assaulted the cop. It really kind of bugged me that they automatically believed that that's what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that intentionally it was supposed to bug us so that we
Oh,
could
sure.
the same that Sam does.
She's a master manipulator, the author is. I guess it's a she. Yeah. Master manipulator. Figures out how to get us to love those, to really appreciate those characters, I mean, there were some things that I chuckled at, and I was just in knots along with them, so worried about what was going to happen. It's a book, but I also know it's true.
Yeah,
Right.
true.
It's true and remains that way.
Well, and it kind of circles back to as soon as that gun was introduced,
Ugh.
like
You knew it
I
was gonna
just
be-
had a sick feeling in my stomach the rest of the time, like
just waiting.
the
Yeah,
harbinger
because
of doom.
I was all like, is it, whenever they go to the protest and Sam pulls the gun and the guy at the, I guess courthouse or whatever it was, I thought something was going to happen then. I was like, surely he's going to get shot, and I was like, I was just kind of waiting.
Mhm.
And then when it didn't happen, I was like, but then I knew at some point.
It's not over yet.
No.
Not over yet.
Do you find it interesting that Sam didn't have any other like friends running around? Like he had Maxie and he had his brother, and that was it.
Well, he talks about it in the book, that how he's the shy one.
Mhm.
That Stick's always the one that, like, even when they go to church and they have to deal with all the old ladies,
Right.
Stick's the one that usually does all the talking, and Sam's just the one that goes, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, doing fine, and so
And he's in the shadow, his
Right.
father's shadow.
his
Right.
father's shadow and Stick's shadow.
And
same
Stick's shadow.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know what it's like for the, well, yes, I do. I was the second child.
I was a middle child too, so yeah.
I was more gregarious. I don't know. My brother was in trouble. He grew up in the 60s, so he was always in trouble.
I had my circle of friends, but I wasn't super, like, outspoken.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't go out and make friends. People just kind of flocked to me, I guess. I don't know. But yeah. Yeah, I was more like Sam, I think, than I was like Stick. So.
And torn, thinking about what he wants to do. Does he want to be his brother? Does he want to be his father? And of course, the only thing he can do is be who he's going to be.
But of course, that age is so difficult to
It's so
really
difficult.
realize that.
Yeah, it just broke my heart, though. Oh, why did I assign this again?
Because you're trying to educate us.
Because I want you to share in it. So Stephanie wrote a really long piece here. She watched Vanguard, the Black Panthers' Vanguard of the Revolution, and she's talking about Panther pads. Yeah, I put all of you together. Yeah. Oh, it was Stephanie this was a youth-led idea, a revolution, and the youth is at the front of the rock and the river. But when you think about it, who's at the forefront with gun control? Yeah.
any real major
And-
political thing, it's spearheaded, it seems,
Yeah.
by the young people.
And Greta is really pissed. And but she can't, it's not, does anybody else feel like we're just gonna go pretty soon? Just disappear in a fire or some sort?
Yeah, I think her speech put me into an existential crisis that I wasn't ready for.
Really?
Midlife crisis.
Yeah, because like the numbers that she was, I was aware, but when she said like you wasted like the numbers, like you wasted all this time, you haven't done anything. Yeah, I was like I wasn't aware of it, and it was like, well, we're gonna
die.
we're ruining our planet. How have we done this? And yeah, children are.
Yeah. Well, and I was talking to Emily about this, that I've now started having dreams about really bad weather, and floods.
You guys stop watching
The news.
Yeah. Anything.
Well, it was the news, and on that particular day, there was some disaster occurring everywhere in the United States. Fires, really severe winter storms, including how many inches and how many feet in Colorado?
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
And then something was going on the East Coast. There were two things. It was lake snow effect or lake whatever that
Lake
thing is.
effect snow.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that was occurring. And then there was some kind of big storm out in the ocean on the East Coast, and it was just tornadoes. And then when I think, and earthquakes and everything else that we're undergoing. And some of those earthquakes are created by humans. Yeah, by fracking. Oh, but we don't hear about that anymore. So Stephanie asked, how can we reconcile how a gun can be used as a progressive, empowering idea, along with how a gun can be used by racist cops to shoot down young black men like Steve from The Rock and the River, and Bobby Hutton, the 17-year-old Black Panther gunned down in real life. So that's that word that I want. That tension, that's not it. The conflict that's created between with a gun, and how it's used and when it's used. I just didn't want to see that gun in the hands of anybody.
It's funny that this is the first question because there was a shooting I don't know if it was yesterday or this morning, or last night in Fort Worth. Another officer shot a woman in her home.
Yeah, it was yesterday or the day before yesterday.
So, but if like guns are here and they're gonna be here.
Yep.
I don't know if we can reconcile.
I don't. Maybe we shouldn't. I think humans try to reconcile that mindset, but perhaps we shouldn't make that reconciliation. Perhaps we should keep that tension to the fore and let that inspire or do something. Daisy, you also commented on the Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution. What'd you think about that?
So my husband and I watched this together, and I was looking for a documentary, and someone else mentioned it, but it was really, really eye-opening to learn how the party itself, but really what occurred to me is that we haven't really changed that much. I mean, in some ways. Maybe the violence isn't as open on the street as it was back then, but it's still happening. And
oh yeah,
it kind of made me feel sorry or really eye-opening for Sam's story, even though we know Sam isn't real, but there are children everywhere who live exactly that story. And where have we come? And that was kind of my question is, what movements do we see that are exactly the same today? Because they're still trying to get change. We're still trying to get change.
I think change might accelerate now because I think maybe the only thing almost as powerful as a gun is cell phone cameras. Everybody.
It hasn't helped so far.
Well, I don't know, I think that, actually, I think the first example I remember, and I don't even know if this was the 80s or when, but remember Rodney Brown?
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the first times when people realized that, well, maybe I should speak for myself, maybe not. But that was really when I thought, man, maybe some of the police aren't so good, and kind of a slow awakening.
Well, the crazy thing is the police have dash cams
Yes.
and they're on, or they have body cams and they're on while these things are happening.
But a lot of times, well, they forget.
They forget.
But a lot of times, oh, no, not a lot. A few times they're conveniently off.
Yeah.
No explanation of, oh my, it was, accidentally off.
Yeah.
But the fact that now there's just about always somebody watching is surely going to do some good.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Mm-mm.
There's always a way around it.
Well, that's been tested, that's for sure, because it's still happening and there's, sometimes there's not justice on it. But I think, I don't know, I hope that'll help.
So, Jolene, you also talked about this one.
I did. I talked about Panther pads more than anything else. So these Panther pads, for people who didn't watch the documentary, they are places where male Black Panther members would go and live. Like, they would leave their family and go and live there, communally. That way they're not, the hope is that, the harassing phone calls and late night visits will not continue at their family's residence if they are not there.
Yeah. That they're drawing them away from the families.
But I didn't see whether that actually happened or not. I know that was the goal, but did it stop it? And for me, that was that you're leaving your family unprotected, unsupported, all together, unprotected. That just I understand why you would do it, but I also am going what are you doing? The people who actually had families. And so my main questions were did the lack of the male presence at the family's house, did it make a difference? Was the family actually more endangered or less endangered with them gone? And I connected that back to the Rock and the River because was Sam really safer without Stick there, even though Stick left the gun? And the one that you actually have highlighted, I asked lots of questions. Is this something that's going to be a point of tension with his family or with the party? And whenever I was talking about this in particular, at the very end, Sam says that he intends to join the party, but stay at home. And will he always be able to do that? Or is that naive, I'm going to continue to do both, and try to lead dual lives here? Because will he continue to live there if it affects his family? And I don't know, if it brings shame to his father to have a Panther living under his roof, even though I'm speaking out about peace, what's that tension gonna do to the family? Will he always be able to live at home, or will he eventually have to move into a Panther pad? And so it was just the whole relationship and dynamic that I was playing with.
Don't you think to make that sacrifice, they must feel they have to do this for there ever to be any hope of any improvement. They have to.
Well, that's the aspiration that they have, is that it's going to make it better.
That's right.
But in the documentary too, Fred, what was Fred's last name? He was a youngster, he was maybe 20, but he had been making all these speeches, and he was one of those very engaging people. People flocked to him like Shay whenever she was younger. They just he could rally a group together. I think Mark Antony and Caesar, he can just get them to do anything. And because they left Hampton, yes. And so, and because of this, the FBI conjured up a scheme and said, oh, he's terrible, you should plan a raid on his house, and made up this whole story so that the police in Chicago actually went into his house and murdered everybody in there except for one pregnant lady who was 8 months pregnant.
That was laying right next to him because I watched the video about that too.
Killed all of them and then left the house open so everybody could come and see how they had shot and killed him and dragged him out. There's blood smears on the floor.
And all the splinters were going in.
Yes, and they were they were shooting back at us. There was only one gunshot that was discharged, and it was because they shot a guy who fell back, dropped the gun, and it retorted into the ceiling. They legit went into this Panther pad and slaughtered them.
Well, and that was my idea, thinking that how dangerous is that going to be to have all of these men congregated in one place?
You can get them all in one swoop.
Exactly, which is what they did.
Which is what they did.
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought about. No, don't do that.
Right. It made it easier for the police if they're that corrupt, and very much they were.
And what they did, though, is they created a martyr.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did.
And that is frequently what happens.
Yes.
When it comes to those kinds of behaviors. So I like the observation you make that is this time period when the stereotype of transient African American males became popular? That's a really good question. And
I don't know when that stereotype became popular, but if they're intentionally leaving their families to keep them safer. And it said in the documentary, lots of times they never went back. And we know that the party was only around for 10, 15 years, at its height. And then lots of people started leaving, so they could have gone back theoretically, but they didn't.
And so also perpetuating the stereotype of the absent black father. Yeah.
And we have that with Maxie as well. She doesn't know who her father is, but at the same time, we also see all these African American males leaving on purpose.
Yeah.
And not for nefarious reasons.
No, on purpose, for purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
And then Jeannie, you also commented on the Black Panthers vanguard of the revolution.
I'm a little bit embarrassed to tell this. Fred Hampton, the part you're talking about, when I watched the movie, the documentary, and they talked about Fred Hampton, I looked in our book because one of the dad's friends was named Fred.
Yes.
I wonder if it gave a last name, and it did. It wasn't the real Fred, but I thought of him immediately when I heard it.
Well, at the first meeting, they said, oh, if you think this guy is good, wait until you hear Fred. I think that's what they said. I think they were talking about Fred Hampton.
Yeah, it's Fred Wood in our book. And, but he was friends with Martin, with, Dr. King. And so I thought, well, it could be. But
That was so cool that he'd come in and have chicken pot pie.
I like that she incorporated that friendship, even though it wasn't something that actually happened.
Yeah.
I really like that.
I did too.
I was not at all prepared for this to be as good as it was.
The film, the documentary, yeah, it's really well done.
Yeah, it ought to be required for kids to see that.
Black Panthers. Black Panthers. Black Panther Party. Black Panther movement.
The Black Panthers were absolutely unique.
Being black in America meant that you didn't walk down the street with the same sense of safety and the sense of privilege as a white person. Attack dogs, fire hoses.
Police jump on you, beat you up, put the gun at your head. This is what we were going through on a daily basis.
We stand on the eve of a black revolution, brothers.
Now we have voices within the community that we're not going to continue to turn the other cheek.
We want black power. We want black power.
Second Amendment guarantees the citizen a right to bear arms on public property.
We're going to carry our guns and we're going to follow the police. We're going to maintain a legal distance, ready to throw down if necessary.
Anyone who would approve of this kind of demonstration must be out of their mind.
That's what I need.
These racist Gestapo pigs have to stop brutalizing our community or we're going to drive them out.
The majority of the rank and file are women.
We tried to change some of the clear gender roles. Women had guns and men cooked breakfast for children.
The way we walked and talked and dressed, we were a phenomenon.
The Black Panthers really understood the media. They used us to their advantage.
Chairman of the Black Panther Party, and here he is. They tapped the phone. The phone is probably hooked up to the White House.
You read the Black Panther Party newspaper?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Because I am black and I'm proud.
The FBI wanted to destroy the Panthers.
How about justice? Justice is incidental to law and order.
This was all out attack on the Black Panther Party. Every significant office is going to be raided, bombed, shot, mass arrests.
They were coming to kill us.
When the 15-minute gun battle was over, 2 Black Panthers were dead.
This was obviously a political assassination.
It was like a slaughterhouse.
We were doing fundraisers at places like Jane Fonda's townhouse so that we could raise money for the Legal Defense Fund.
There were 156 not guilty verdicts. That's astonishing.
We don't hate nobody because of their color. We hate oppression.
We refer to ourselves as the vanguard. We wanted the entire community to follow.
I feel free. I feel absolutely free. You understand? That's what I feel.
So Fred Hampton is mentioned on page 128. Yeah. It says, but wait until you hear Fred Hampton. That brother can talk you to tears.
You know, also in their newsletter, that's where it originated. They did a cartoon of a pig as a police, and that's where the term pig originated. I didn't know that. In the newsletter,
I think I assumed that that's where it came from because I was a teenager or I was young and I knew that they were being called pigs and I thought it came from the Black Panthers, but yeah. Emily.
So I found Huey P. Norton's story, and Huey P. Norton was the co-founder of the Black Panther Party. And so this was basically a film directed by Spike Lee, and it's just Roger Smith on a stage with a cigarette and a microphone, and he's just up there talking. And so it's like a very long hour-and-a-half monologue, but he's just up there and he's representing Huey P. Newton and his story and his narrative and basically acting it out, but just through dialogue. Mm-hmm. And then in the background, there's clips of like the actual Black Panther Party and the movements, but really the purpose of the film is just for the audience to focus on the dialogue and the story and the narrative. And I feel like, especially with Dear Martin and Rock in the River, the narrative becomes a driving force behind activism. And you touch on that, and we've read about that in critical race theory. And so I kind of was looking at the role that narratives plays in activism, and what role do they play? And that's kind of where I was going with it, and with my question.
Well, and that's what the counter narratives are, the same thing.
Yeah.
And here is
brought from the stage to the screen, this mesmerizing portrait of the co-founder of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense carries a Peabody Award.
I was reading a news item just the other day that blew my mind about this guy, Jimmy the Greek. Did you hear about him? Jimmy the Greek, sports broadcaster at one of the television networks. And he was fired from his network position because allegedly he said that black people are intellectually inferior because we are athletically superior. But he did not say that. What he said was that black people, if given the chance, can do anything they want in the society, even play golf and tennis. But see, the society is programmed to read into every little thing black inferiority, when really it's just a question of black superiority, which of course America's afraid of, right? And if white people in America truly and sincerely wanted to be superior, all they have to do is get some black folks who enslaved them for 400 years, give them the worst housing, the worst food, the worst education, the worst clothing, and then the weak gene line would die out and a truly superior race of people would emerge. Now wait a minute, hold on. I'm not talking about what the Reverend Jesse Jackson has to say. I'm talking about what the Reverend Huey P. Newton has to say. And I do not expect white media to create positive black male images. Positive black male images are created through revolution. And I thank you if you say that I have scared you. Hey, I take it as a compliment. Because any time that a black man in America stands up against the slave mentality, he's going to scare some white people. Okay, and some black folks too.
Roger Gwenver Smith, the writer and the star of this production, is here to accept the Peabody Award.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am joined on stage by my producing colleagues of Lunar Ray Films, Mr. Bob L. Johnson, Mr. Mark Henry Johnson, Mr. Stephen Adams. We are also joined by our colleague, Mr. Stephen Shalansky of the Stars Encore Group, who very graciously, generously broadcast this film. We are, of course, indebted to our director, Mr. Spike Lee. This is our 7th collaboration. We are indebted to PBS for also broadcasting. We are indebted to the Heritage Network as well, the National Black Programming Consortium, the Ford Foundation. All of these people came together to collaborate on what is obviously not a one-man show. I am joined today by a very special person, my father. We are celebrating his 80th birthday. I would like to thank you, Dad, for joining my mother at the NAACP convention where I was conceived. He's right there.
Now let me show you Huey. I'm not going to show all of it because it's 14 minutes long.
In America, black people are treated very much as the Vietnamese people or any other colonized people because we're brutalized. The police in our community occupy our area, our community as a foreign troop occupies territory. And the police are there not to, in our community, not to promote our welfare or for our security and our safety, but they're there to contain us, to brutalize us and murder us because they have their orders to do so. And just as the soldiers in Vietnam have their orders to destroy the Vietnamese people. The police in our community couldn't possibly be there to protect our property because we own no property. They couldn't possibly be there to see that we receive the due process of law for the simple reason that the police themselves deny us the due process of law. And so it's very apparent that the police are only in our community, not for our security, but the security of the business owners in the community, and also to see that the status quo is kept intact.
People aren't hip to that yet. They're not really aware of it. They know some shit's going on in this country somewhere. But a lot of people out there don't know where it's at. They think it's the black people doing it. That all those riots are causing my life to be miserable in all areas, you know. And they really haven't focused in on the fact that it's the pigs and their mentors, the people who control the pigs, the power structure, those bald-headed businessmen at the Chamber of Commerce. See? They're not turned on to that power structure. They just know that life is becoming increasingly miserable for everybody. But when they find out who it is that's causing the trouble, and who it is that's making life miserable, who it is that's responsible for all their sons being murdered in Vietnam. When they get tuned into that, then they're all going to be just like the Panthers. Because this is what we're tuned into. We see what's going on, and it's just a terrible problem situation. More and more people are turning on to that, you see? So I think that they're going to do the dog right here in Babylon.
When we first started, we had a police alert patrol, and we would patrol the community. If we saw the police brutalizing anyone, we would put an end to this. Usually the police wouldn't brutalize anyone if we were on hand because we were armed, and if the police arrested the individual, we would follow him to the jail and bail the individual out, whether he was a Panther or not. And we would gain many recruits like this. So therefore the community started to say that, well, these people are really concerned about our welfare.
I think the basic reaction to a cat that like experiences the Panther. I don't mean who sees a guy go by in a black jacket or a beret. I mean a guy who sees the Panther in action with their lives on the line. When he sees that, that's the end of it. You know, like he's either scared to death where he's gonna never commit no more crimes, do nothing wrong. You know, he's gonna jaywalk, or else he comes down, comes around, and says that he can dig it. See? You don't find a guy, black cat, just remaining the same after really seeing Panther.
Did it, okay, which part was it? The cops were harassing a child, and the Panthers came up with their guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not misremembering, right?
That's right. That's right.
Came up with their guns and said, "What are you doing?" Can you imagine that now? Of course not. You know, that just isn't going to happen. But I can't even imagine it then.
Very gutsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't you think they just turn around and shoot him dead? Just like
In a heart. Yeah. I mean, they just shot the woman. So in her house, had a gun legally.
Well, not so. I think he's up for charges. Isn't he?
Oh yeah, they've arrested him.
No, but the woman.
Oh yeah, she had.
Yeah,
she
but
had
I
her
don't
gun
know.
legally. Yeah.
I don't know if she had it out when he.
I don't know either.
I know that she had one registered to her, but I don't know if she had it out where he could see it.
I kind of tend not to think that probably not, but I'm really curious to see what transpired, although I don't think we'll ever know.
It came on today that some witness said she was putting it out. Who knows? Anymore, you can't believe what you hear.
So Shay, what did you have to say?
Well, I focused on the 10-point program.
Mm-hmm.
I found it very interesting. I guess just because I didn't realize that they had an actual,
Yes, ma'am.
agenda, right? Exactly. And so I bookmarked that chapter. But my question, because that's why I picked that video, is because it kind of went back and reiterated the whole 10-point program that we see Sam reading in chapter 5, and so I went back through them, and my question was basically, looking back, do we feel like these demands were, just demands? Do we feel like they were represented well? And were any of them, did any of them have like a deeper meaning or anything of that sort? And honestly, I had, which one was it? I questioned the one where they wanted black men to be exempt from military service. And I actually sat and talked to my fiance about this because I was just trying to figure out, I was like, are they wanting all exemption, or were they just wanting the ability to be exempt from the draft? Because, certain, exemptions were made for white men for sure, as far as drafting goes and for the military service. And so we actually sat and we talked about it for 15 minutes or so. And that's kind of why I stuck to the 10-point program as far as.
But who was drafted? I mean, who generally populated the service?
Right, and that's
because
why
they're not able to get their exemption for college.
See, and that's what I was trying to figure out. Do they want to be
like completely exempt totally, or they just want to have access to the same exemptions that, because it was just kind of a vague, you know, a vague demand, and so.
Well, and I think that comes from them, that why should they fight for a country?
Right, that's not going
to. That wants to destroy them. And that has enslaved them.
Right.
I thought maybe it was there because they felt like, and I'm sure this has happened, sometimes they just send them to their death.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were constantly put on the front line.
I mean, just because they're black.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's perpetrated murder.
Yeah.
I really liked it because it kind of like promoted more like thought-provoking questions for me in doing this. And my, you know, Jonathan brought up the fact that a lot of times when you're negotiating or making demands, you demand really big so that when you pull back some, you're actually getting what you wanted in the first place. I was like, well, is that what we're looking at here? Or were these the things that were expected completely? Non-negotiables, right? And then honestly, I mean, do we see where it was successful? You know, because, you know, number 7 on the list that we see Sam read, we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of black people. I mean, hello. Yeah. Did that actually happen? No. You know, we can say that it happens less, maybe, but
something else takes its place.
Oh yeah. I just really liked that there was a list of tenets that the Black Panthers stood for, because I didn't know that beforehand. I just thought they wanted, you know, they were just a violent party to, you know, basically make a statement that we want the same that everybody else has.
To determine our destiny of our black community, full employment, end to the robbery by the capitalists of our black community, decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings,
education,
immediate end to police brutality, freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city persons in jail. We want all black people, when brought to trial, to be tried in court by jury of their peer group or people from their black communities.
I like that addition.
Yeah.
Because especially with the we want freedom for all black men held in prison, because, you know, it's like, well, we can't just let them all go. Right. But so having that addendum of, well, we want them, if there is a case against somebody, to be tried fairly and with real peers, not, you know, an all-white, right, an all-white jury of maybe 1 or 2 not male member, you know. And then, of course, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. That was number 10 in the book that we read. And I was just like, I don't know, that just really humanized the whole party more than villainized, because we grew up with a more villainized version.
Well, here it says on the military service, we believe that black people should not be forced to fight in the military service to defend a racist government that does not protect us. We will not fight and kill other people of color in the world who, like black people, are being victimized by the white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by whatever means necessary.
Okay, that makes sense now.
And Allie brought this one up. While reading this novel, I could not help but to think of this film, which is Suffragettes. Suffragettes. Until viewing this film, I was staunchly against violence and destruction, even in the name of change. However, this movie does a great job illuminating why violence, destruction is sometimes needed. As one of the characters says, we break windows, we burn things because war is the only thing men listen to. If so much violence is inflicted on a group of people, can we really expect them to remain peaceful and nonviolent? And has anybody seen this film? It's with Meryl Streep.
It's almost like
it's recent.
We train thieves and then punish them for being thieves.
Yeah.
Women should not exercise judgment in political affairs.
If we allow women to vote, it will mean the loss of social structure.
Vote for women! Vote for women! Vote for women! I'm drunk.
You work at the laundry?
Part-time from when I was 7, full-time from when I was 12.
We meet Mondays and Thursdays if you're interested.
You a suffragette, Mrs. Elliot?
I consider myself more of a soldier. As Mrs. Pankhurst says, it's deeds, not words, that will get us the vote.
We've identified weaknesses in their ranks. We're hoping one of them will break.
They're saying she's to speak.
This is a deliberate escalation.
This has to stop.
For 50 years, we have labored peacefully to secure the vote for women. We've been ridiculed, battered, and ignored.
Punish those responsible, whatever way you can.
Mama!
All my life, I've done what men told me. Well, I can't have that anymore. Took my love, took it down.
I incite the women in Britain to rebellion.
Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? We break windows. We burn things, because war's the only language men listen to. Well, I've been afraid of changing.
There's nothing left but to stop you.
We're in every home. We're half the human race. You can't stop us all.
You might lose your life before this is over.
I'm getting older too. We will win. I take my love, take it down.
Never surrender. Never give up the fight.
In the snow-covered hill.
So if they wouldn't have done that, would have they gotten the vote? If they wouldn't have gone to violence, would have that? Go ahead, what were you saying?
That's always the question, though, because I mean, you don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because you have to get the attention.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and it's sometimes things have to be destroyed in order to be built back up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when in the book, when Dr. King dies, there's riots all throughout the city.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an interview from an author, and she was from Bluebird, author Bluebird, about East Texas, and she was writing about Black people, a Black ranger, and his story. But she was saying that the reason why people rioted is because it was a reaction of we're destroying property because we can't face the truth. People won't believe us.
Well, and a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't we destroy this? Because it's never going to be ours.
The whole face of the peaceful movement, was violently assassinated. So it's like, well, if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to commit violence on us when we try and be peaceful, then it's like, what have you left us? Right. What option have you left us at this point?
Mm-hmm. Katie, are you there still? Yeah, there's Katie. All right. So you found an article.
So it's like a transcript of a play or like a stage production. And so it's, like it says here, it's like scenes of racism through 20 different characters. And it mostly revolves around, like, it's called The Talk. So how, like, Black families have to have a talk with their children of what happens when you get pulled over, what happens when you go in a grocery store. You always ask for a receipt. You have your hands on the wheel if you're in the car and you get pulled over. and which reminded me of, I can't even, I mean, I think Dear Martin talked a little bit about it, and then, gosh, was it Junior Brown? I can't remember. It was one of the texts from earlier. Feed, maybe? I can't even remember. Or, I mean, Fade, I can't remember, though. Anyway, about, like, having to have that, like, expect to be discriminated against discussion. And so it starts with a dad dropping his kid off on the first day of school, and it's like a kindergartner or first grader, and he's and the kid overhears a news report of a shooting at a traffic stop, white officer, black drivers, and so the dad has to like have the talk with this young boy about, well, you know, the reason that happened is because he's the same color that you are, and so the different characters are from like 1960s forward, and so I just thought it was really sad but interesting that it was the same, like basically the same scene up through present day, and that it didn't show change. I mean, some, but not really.
Yeah, they're still having to say, "Don't run."
Right. Don't. Yeah.
You could
exactly.
be, yeah.
And always get a receipt so they don't think you stole something, and it was just disheartening. But also interesting to see that it's still, you know, it's still a relevant conversation and a necessary conversation. And I think sometimes, you know, because I am not Black, that is not something that I would think about. Like, that's not a conversation I have with my kids. And, you know, just kind of how Allie was saying in her post that she was, like, from the beginning, like, very nonviolence, right? But when you read this book and it has, you know, examples of nonviolence and then examples of the like threat of violence from the Black Panthers carrying the guns, well, that's the only scene that we see anything happen. That's the only scene where we see the cops stepping back, is with that threat of violence, or even just the visualization of violence. So I don't know. It just made me have to like rethink things and made my brain hurt and sad.
Yeah, I've seen Black mothers talk about how they have to bring up their sons about the things they have to tell them, their life lessons, which are they're the same as what you're bringing up about if you get pulled over, look straight ahead and keep your hands on the steering wheel. If you don't run.
Right.
Yeah. And so many things that they can't do, that they have to be raised differently. That's an awful
And
thought.
how to tell your child, like, no, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just the way you look. Whereas, you know, that's not a conversation I have to have with my child. And it's just a harsh reality, you know, that it really showed in this show or in this like play of just throughout time, you know, that it was just the same conversation over and over.
Yeah. I don't think these are such difficult books and topics. I'm going to come back to the people who are not streaming. Kirsty, you're not here today. Okay. I only put a little bit of yours up because it was really long.
Sorry. Okay. And this, I found this article, and the author of this article tries to reject the idea that the violence used by the Black Panther Party brought about its failure. He believes that the Black Panther Party is in fact a visible icon of power and self-defense. So he completely rejects this public assumption that people consider the Black Panther Party as a band of hoodlums who promote violence. And this is exactly what Sam's father believes in, and that's why he doesn't led his sons to join this party because he believes that this party uses violence. But the author of this article tries to analyze some of the photographs that were taken of the Black Panther Party's demonstration to show that if they had a show of guns, arms, or they showed their clenching fists in their demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
That's it doesn't mean that they were savage or they just used violence. They just wanted to convey their messages to the authorities who had violated their civic rights symbolically, just to evoke the authorities' sympathy that they were the victims of racial discrimination, and just wanted to say that, wanted to acknowledge their existence and their power. So if they show their guns, that's actually a symbol of their power. They just want to say that they are powerful, but not savage or what. So reading this article, the novel, and then the article, I was just wondering how much the appearance, the Black Panthers in their demonstrations, carrying guns with themselves or showing this clenching fists, make people consider them as a band of hoodlums, or especially the title that they chose for their party, like this Black Panther. So Panther is the name of this big animal that brings savagery or kind of dangerous animal to our minds. So these are the when they dress up in black clothes. So all these things make people think that this group is kind of savage. So they supported the FBI to remove this party. So I was just wondering how these things together made this party had a kind of short life. This party didn't last for a long time.
I think like one of the reasons why they didn't necessarily last for a long time was because they had the co-leadership, and the two co-leaders had vastly different ideas. So one was very much about the violence, the other one was more about the social reform and like the breakfast and stuff. And so I think because they had the two differing heads, they split the party, and that's when they started to crumble. I don't think it necessarily had to do with just the violence.
Yes, of course. This is one reason, and there was another reason from outside, you know, what people think about this people,
right?
These
For sure.
parties.
That for sure.
Like, you can be guaranteed that white people were intimidated.
Oh yeah.
Because suddenly people were standing up to them.
Yeah. Their violence and their success.
Their unity, their ability to.
They had to be destroyed.
Yeah.
They were too successful.
Here we go again.
It's something.
It's got gas. It's got gas.
The ghost has gas.
The ghost has gas. The ghost has gas. Can you guys hear that on? Okay. Yeah.
But something else in the Vanguard of the Revolution, that documentary, I think it was Huey that was talking about why they picked the symbol of the Black Panther, and saying that like most of the time Black Panthers are not going to attack you, they'll back up first and try to remove themselves from the situation, but it's whenever you continue coming at them that they pounce. And so it was the color.
They're not aggressive.
Yes, but it was also the nature of the panther. Like, so to understand like the message that at least Huey was trying to portray, it was like, we're nonviolent until you push us too far, and then we're going to react. And Cleaver was the other guy, and he was all about the pounce and less about the backup.
And that's always been the conflict when discussing equal rights and race and for blacks. But you know, now Dad doesn't like the Panthers. He thinks they're a violent group. He's opposed because he follows the peace, the route of peace. But yet, what does he do?
He becomes at least friends or.
He helps them, and he's talking
with Leroy.
He's known Leroy for. They've had many conversations. We find out at the end of the book.
And that was something that I wanted to ask the question about, but I didn't know how to quite get there. Was like, what do we do with this? That like Dad has a relationship with like the chapter head in their neighborhood, and like would that have made a difference to Stick and to Sam if they had known that all along?
Right.
And like, you know, like
they might not have pushed back against their dad so hard if they
Right.
know that
he wasn't, that he was with like the bend somewhat.
There's also there's also the fact that old adage of keep your enemies close and your friends close and your enemies closer. Pardon me, but because like they did have conflicting views, but it all in all they wanted the same thing. They wanted
the same thing.
They wanted the same thing. They had the same end goal in mind. They just had differing opinions about how to get there.
And I wondered if Bucky's trial was what brought them together.
I think it.
Yeah, we're not sure how long.
Well, I mean, I inferred from the end of the novel when Leroy was telling Sam that they talked, and because Leroy tells us that that's how he got into the whole movement in the first place, was hearing Sam's father speak.
Exactly.
So my thoughts are, or I at least inferred that Leroy has had a somewhat, some sort of friendship, mentorship type thing with Sam's father for a while, or at least, has followed the ideals for a while. And so I really, like you asked, I really feel like if Sam and Stick knew that the dad would, while not involved, but having active and open conversations with, one of the head leaders of the community, that Black Panther community there, that maybe they wouldn't have pushed back so hard against him.
Maybe that whole thing at the end, revealing that, says to us, don't keep these conversations secret. Show that we can communicate.
And like how Sam didn't know that he'd been asked to testify.
Yeah.
Right. He's like, I would have done it in a heartbeat.
And whenever Stick left, they never talked about him being gone. Never.
It was just kind of
like he disappeared. He never existed, even though like Mom's sad sometimes and Dad slept by his bed once or twice. Like it's almost like he didn't exist. And how much more of an internal conflict did that develop in Sam, because he felt like he had to repress this while also grieving
not
the loss
being able to
essentially
talk
of his
to
brother. He
right.
lost his best friend.
And not being able to talk about it, like knowing that his parents were just going to kind of shut it down.
It's like what happens sometimes with girls whenever they're raped, and they just pretend like the family, even though they know, it never happened.
Yeah,
we're just not going to talk about it. That'll make it
If
better.
we don't talk about it, it didn't happen.
It goes away. It goes away.
And so, I'm like, it's a similar thing. Like with Sam, I feel like he just lost his brother, like metaphorically before he literally did, and he's not having anybody to help coach him through this grieving process because they're pretending like it didn't happen.
I think
he's angry.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think at the end though, having Leroy reveal to Sam that he's had a conversational relationship with his father all this time, that it allows Sam to realize that he can, kind of take both actions, and create something of his own moving forward, as far as him going home but still wanting to be part of the party. And I think that's how he's going to make it successful, knowing that his father, ideologically, kind of follows the same path, just does it in a different way. And I think that's how Sam kind of comes into himself at this point.
Yeah, and Sam is going to be able to negotiate those differences because he's been such an enormous, he's participated so fully in both sides. So he's going to be that rock and the river, you know? He will be able to negotiate that, perhaps. And he's got noble ideas and drives, and that's one of the things I love about this novel is that he wants to carry on what Stick had in mind, and we find out what Stick had in mind.
And it wasn't the violence.
And it wasn't the violence. He didn't even like guns. He hated them. So, you know, here then we see a whole new side of Stick. And so we see a whole new side of this whole revolution, basically. And how very complex and complicated it was. No easy answers. Megan, I misspelled your name. Sorry. Didn't I? Did I misspell your name? No, I didn't.
No, it's right.
Sorry.
That's right.
Oh, it was you who had 3 questions. Pick a question.
Okay. I think that I'm going to go with question number 2, which is about the novel itself. So, you guys can read it, but I'm going to read it for myself. As the novel progresses,
can you see it?
And yeah, I can see it. I promise.
Okay.
As the novel progresses, we hear Stick and then Leroy say that Sam can't be the rock in the river. This metaphor is explained in the last few pages of the book as Leroy and Sam revisit the story that Stick has told them. Does this comparison between the rioting, tumultuous river, and the calm and steady rock describe the 2 brothers, which we find out that it does, and if so, which brother is the river and which is the rock? Now, that last bit of the question is really what I want to get to. That's the meat of my question, because at the end, Sam says that Stick was the rock and that he has got to be the river. He's got to forge his own way. So I answered my own question for really. But
you just have to talk through it.
The book answered my question, but what I want to talk about is that section, that moment of time, that period of time where the thoughts were reversed, where Sam thought he was the rock and he thought Stick was the river, because Stick was the one that was going out and protesting with
rushing
the Black Panthers, rushing forward to do the things that the Black Panthers were doing, whether it be the breakfast, the clinic, protecting the people, but the line of Black Panthers on the day that their father got stabbed down their sidewalk, protecting them from the press. And then Sam was kind of in the background. He was the one that was planted in where his father was at. He wanted to stay with Dad. He didn't want to rush forward. Yes, he went to the class because Maxie brought him there, but it wasn't his first thing that he wanted to do. So he was kind of dragging his heels a little bit.
So there.
That's my 2 cents. Anybody else want to join in on it?
It's a challenge to be both the rock and the river.
It really is.
And maybe it's just that there's a time for both. Maybe not at the same time, but there is a time for both, because that's what Stick did. He was both. It's just that Sam didn't know it. He's the one that seems to be rushing forward. Yet he's got these really stable ideas that he wants to fulfill with the clinics and all of that, and complete that.
That's why I kind of found it interesting that his nickname is Stick. Because the stick normally floats with the river. And
you're right.
River, but it's also sturdy.
Oh, look at that.
And we're never told
Good.
why he calls him Stick.
I know that bothered me.
We're just told that only Sam is the one that calls him Stick.
Oh, I think we just broke the novel. We just figured it out.
We broke the code.
We broke the code.
You also, Andrea, wrote about that same article, that's not what Megan talked about, but you addressed the woman question, gender dynamics with the Black Panther power.
Yeah, so
The Panther Party.
after reading the article and watching the Vanguard documentary and the reading the book. So in the novel we see Mama being a really important character and Maxie. And the article describes women being a really strong leader, being really strong leaders, being there as well, like being there to be the women in the party. Like we were talking about earlier, serving and picking up phones. They were that character as well, but they were holding the guns. Their gender role was fluid. But for Mama in the novel, her role
very traditional.
It was very traditional. In the article, it describes that traditional role as being a white. I wrote it somewhere. It's a white. Whatever is it? I can't see. It's traditionally a white role, white subordination, white standard of subordination, and I wanted to compare that to Mama, but I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it. Is that traditionally her? What do you guys think?
I wondered about her too because she nothing. I don't know. Maybe it's because I was working on my massive annotated bit at the same time. But I kind of saw Mama almost like Katniss. Mama is always reactionary. She tries to stand up for herself sometimes and for what she thinks, and she can be a strong character, but we don't usually see Roland cowing to her. We see him bumping against her, but we don't see him subordinating himself to her, even in the home.
He is so powerful in the community, so well respected, such an image to maintain, and he's very conscious of that image,
even in front of his boys.
Even in front of his boys, he never lets it down.
But at the same time, Mama's not afraid to stand up to Father, because you see that when they argue in the book. And
what was that argument about?
It was
about him talking to Sam, and she wanted him to just leave Sam alone for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't it when Sam snuck out to go to the meeting?
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I told Mama where I was going."
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Mama said no.
Right. And so, Sam makes a point of saying that they very rarely would hear them argue. They may have discussions or go off to their room and talk away from the boys or something, but to actually hear them fighting was a big deal. And Mama was just no, we're not doing this right now. So, and I liked that she stood up to him in that moment, because every other point of the novel, it was more of her role as being not lesser, but more subordinate to
supporting,
right,
a supporting role,
right.
And when she went catatonic after her husband was attacked, after Stick was, when she went and focused on the TV. Oh, when Dr. King died.
Yes.
That reminded me a lot of 1984 when she was just focused on the screen. It was just that if it was me, I would have been, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? What do I do
next?
But it was just I'm alone, I need to focus. So I don't know.
Yeah, and when King died, she said, "We need to watch this."
Right, and then when Father is stabbed is when she was by herself, because Sam hadn't made it home yet.
Right.
And and so she's focusing on that, trying to figure out not only what's happened to her husband, but what's happened to her son.
To Sam.
Knowing that Sam was supposed to be there. And
well, but it's also her figuring out what am I supposed to do right now?
Right.
Later she says, I have to do what Roland would want me to do.
Right.
I am his wife. What would he want me to do in this moment?
they're not going to get on the bus with all these reporters right in their face. So we are going to stay right here.
So she's very conscious of his image too.
Oh, yes, very much so. She's the hostess. She sets the table for Dr. and Mrs. King.
Makes chicken pot pie.
And makes chicken pot pie and uses the good china. So yeah, that mother's a really interesting character, and sets up a really enormous generational gap when you think about Maxie and you think about Mama.
But we're also talking about different classes as well too. So it's not just
And
like there are several
a fatherless family.
A fatherless
So Maxie
family.
comes from a matriarchal family.
Mm-hmm.
So she's probably seen from her mother that, you know what, you just have to be your own and do what you have to do. Whereas Sam's coming from a patriarchal family.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Did they talk very much about Maxie's mom?
Hardly anything at all.
The only reason we know that the dad's not around is because when Sam got angry, he
lashed out,
slowed up, threw out that slur.
And Roland went to go ask her for permission for Maxie to be there after
Right.
With the riots.
Yeah. Otherwise, the only family member of hers that we really see anything of is her brother.
Jennifer Ellison, you're up.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to really just talk about, most of the novel just deals with this idea of the different responses to this kind of trauma and brutality. And I wanted to do something originally with sort of Sam's lack of action, really, like particularly when, when Bucky was being beaten. And I was looking, and this particular article was dealing with kind of looking at the psychology behind Martin Luther's approach, really, in nonviolence and things like that, which you can see throughout the novel is certainly questioned by other characters. And so that was what led me to the article. And then sort of throughout that, you kind of have, as you mentioned before, you have Sam sort of living in his father's shadow, and you have him watching his brother and all these things. And to me, it was really sort of just painting a picture of, I think, where most people find themselves, where these things are happening, and we know that there are multiple reactions to them, and we're sort of frozen in the morality of it, of which one is the right thing to do. And the article talks about processing and not acting as a way of coping, and just sort of staying out of it as much as you can to process. And the problem with processing is time. That time is going on while you're processing these things, and nothing else is stopping. And so I just considered, really, the question I asked was, which characters? What did I ask? Sorry, it was which characters and which avoid pain to survive or cope, and how is this evident? And I think multiple answers to that. I think I could think of one for almost every character, but I was just curious, sort of speaking to some of the characters' lack of action or wanting to avoid this sort of traumatic thing as a way of coping.
Well, there isn't much that Sam can do at the time. There just isn't.
He's never encountered such a scene.
And he's powerless.
Physically. Like, he's heard of them, I'm sure, given who his family is. But he's never actually seen it happen right in front of him. And so, shock. You just go into shock. And it's like, well, what can I do? And it's definitely, not... His inaction, I don't feel, is a coping mechanism at all, because it stays with him. He just sees these images.
It's what drives him to testify at the trial.
Right. He sees these images over and over and over in his mind's eye. He just can't get rid of it. So I definitely don't see that as being a survival or a coping mechanism, his inaction in that particular scene.
It's a reaction.
Yeah, it's a reaction. At that point, it's just like, he didn't know what he could do, and if he even tried, he would have been beaten.
He would have been beaten as well. So there wasn't anything he could do.
So in that sense, he's avoiding the interaction, so he's avoiding pain. Like, he doesn't want to do anything, so he avoids pain from the cop.
But I don't know that it's not. I don't know that it's because he doesn't want to do anything. I think it's because he just doesn't know that he could do anything. Like it's, he's gone into shock at this point.
Mm-hmm.
At many points in the novel, Sam reminded me of Kenny from
Watson's Go to Birmingham. He is
he's just like frozen while these things are happening.
Yeah. In fact, I thought with that and this one, I thought about the brother-brother relationship.
Yes, because it becomes a fight or flight. Like, and you never know exactly how you will react to a situation or circumstance until it's upon you. And so, like, he might have thought, he might have mentally gone, well, if anything like that ever happens, I'll totally like go in and save the day. But when it actually happened in front of him, he just froze.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and he's 13, 14, like,
right.
And naive.
The best thing I would do is just freeze. That there would be like going the other direction, to not even be a witness, Like, yeah.
Yeah, because that I'm sure a lot of the other people who were in the area, like all the other witnesses.
And there were several.
Oh, yeah. They just be like, oh, yeah, well, no, we didn't say anything.
Yeah, and they wouldn't testify. But he did.
Right.
Well, and I guess they were afraid of reprisal. And I was too. In fact, I thought Bucky would be the one to get killed.
I did too. In fact, when he smiled at Kenny, when he smiled at Sam, I thought, that's it. He's dying. He's dying right now.
I even thought he would be the one killed in the car at the end. At the end, instead of Stick was a surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were coming for Bucky.
Well, I think that they were. I'm sure they knew.
They were just going to get somebody, and that was
right.
Worked out conveniently. But yeah, I agree, they were.
Because even had the gun not been in the glove box, I am sure one of them would have been mortally injured.
Mm-hmm.
But Stick was playing at death the entire time. Like from the beginning, whenever he joined and he brought the gun into the house, like he was already like that was hardcore foreshadowing of what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he was killed because of that gun, even though it wasn't loaded, like
even though he himself hated guns and
didn't even bring it to the car.
Right. Like he's not the one he didn't want to promote the violence. He wanted to promote the social. I think that's the biggest injustice of that death is that he probably would have been one of the members who was never violent unless, push came to shove.
Mm-hmm.
And like that tension, the author plays with that tension, especially whenever he almost dies by being strangled, and then he doesn't. And so like the pressure ducks, it's just she releases a little bit because he doesn't die, but then it just builds it even more to whenever he does.
What do you think, Jennifer?
I mean, I think all of that kind of comes back to like a lot of people were talking about the fight or flight and all that kind of stuff. And I think those are all psychological pathways, which is what that author was describing. And I think that's natural. And I completely agree with what everybody was saying. I think what I'm wondering though is like, obviously, because this is a fictional story, what is the author getting at with that? That are we all in this sort of position of fight or flight? You know what I mean? When it comes to this topic, that's what I was wondering, if this was not sort of symbolic of a lot of our stance, that until it is shoved in our face that we're going to react to it. Otherwise we are in this weird neutral zone, at least, in my day-to-day, I feel like that's sadly probably where I would fall. And kind of as we were talking.
I'm pretty sure that's. I'm sorry. And you know what, the panther, the animal, would spring into action to defend.
Oh yeah, instantly, no thought.
No thought. And that's very likely what the Black Panthers would do. But Kenny's not one.
Sam.
I'm Sam. Okay, I'm screwed. Thanks a lot, Alex.
No, I made that connection too, though.
Yeah, I do too. If you don't know what we're talking about, it's Watson's Go to Birmingham, 1963, and it addresses the bombing of the 16th Avenue Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Baptist Church. in Birmingham, also known as Birmingham. Yeah. I think you're down there. You're coming up. You might be last. I don't know. Yeah, and Walter Dean Myers, was that also, or was that somebody else's? No. All right, Jennifer?
I wanted to focus on the sibling relationship, and I found this study that looked at how a group of adolescents reacted to losing their sibling. And the study showed that most of them actually used it as a means of growth, and because they had to mature more quickly, and they actually their values became more developed towards religion and what was the other one? Positively towards religion and the lesson learned. And I feel like we saw that in how Sam quickly grew from that. Whenever he got over his rage and thirst for revenge, he quickly snapped out of it and used it as a means for growth to realize his brother.
Yeah, because they, what was the guy's name that meant to take revenge? Raheem, yeah.
Max's brother.
Yeah, plans to take revenge and shoot.
And I ended up, I was so frustrated yesterday. I was trying to create a question out of this, and I was at work, and the bathroom flooded. One of the boys stuffed a bunch of paper, and it flooded the hallway. So we were all out there cleaning it up, and I was like, I'm just going to submit this with no question but the question that I was toying with, but I couldn't make it concrete.
Sorry, I'm looking at the cat.
Was can this sibling, the loss of a sibling and the growth that comes from it, be applied to sibling-like relationships, like the brotherhood and sisterhood that we see?
I think so. I think so.
Oh, I should have written that question.
That's okay.
That sounds weird, so I erased it. Because I wonder if Raheem, because I think we kind of would see him as a brother as well. If he put aside his rage as well and grew from it in the same way that Sam did.
Well, Leroy, because remember when Sam goes back, Leroy says that he's pretty sure that Raheem's not going to go through with it. So I'm sure Leroy, as a mentor, can kind of see where Raheem will have that growth.
Yes. And he's trusting that he's going to make a better decision, that he's been the mentor that he needs.
Right.
And will make the right decision.
And then he'll kind of be more like Stick would be. Like Stick, wouldn't go after revenge like that.
Well, here's the thing, I'm more likely to do something with somebody else than I would to do it with myself.
Yeah.
And so, once he lost his wingman, it would take even more courage, if you want to call it that, to go forth and, exact revenge. So.
Yeah, I just kept wanting to say to Sam, it's not the way, this is not the way.
But
I knew better. I knew he wasn't going to do that.
Well, I couldn't, I wanted to believe that, but at the same time, I'm I could see this happening, because it happens, And
I wanted to do it.
He enjoyed the feel of the gun in his hand, and
right.
he felt
he was just so angry, because rage will do that to you. It will not, you will not even realize what you've done until after it's happened, and then you're like, well, shit, And so, but I was very glad that, that he got out of the car, and, he kind of gave himself a moment, because a lot of times, and he even admitted to still being angry and still wanting to do something about it, but realizing that this was not what needed to be done. Let's keep the momentum moving forward for the vision that Stick believed in. And that in itself will be a revenge towards the police officer.
Exactly. We will survive and thrive despite what you do to us.
Right.
Yeah.
He got indoctrinated to the power of the gun.
Yeah.
When they intervened, when the police were doing something wrong, I don't remember what they were doing, and they remember they were all there with their guns, and they said, we don't I don't believe this man's breaking the law. We're gonna just all go along, we just kind of dispersed and nobody died. So I think you could grow to that the gun is powerful.
It's a powerful image.
Option in your toolbox, but you don't have to use it always.
Katie, what are you smiling about?
My child is screaming from the other room. But her daddy has to deal with it.
Those are the best moments.
Okay, you just had this grin. Kind of had me, I was wondering what was going on. And oh, that sweet kitty.
I know, it's a sweet kitty.
Oh my gosh. Oh, girl or boy?
It's a girl. Her name's Bailey.
Oh. She is so sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah, sometimes
My cat is not.
Mine do.
Mine comes up and lays on my chest and will put her paws out to my face.
Yeah. It's this whole.
Yeah, it's like I want to be tucked up under your chin.
I'm like, I'm trying to read. She's like, I read too.
Osmosis.
Greg. Hi, Greg.
Hey, everybody. I'm excited.
What time do we have to end class?
It's 6:50 already.
Do we have to end class?
Oh, gosh, darn.
She's not. Okay, we can continue then.
Oh.
No, we won't. I guarantee it.
Let me say that. Oh.
I got 2 hours to drive.
So, Greg.
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
go now if you
Oh,
want.
no, I'm good right now. I just can't stay till 10.
No, neither can I. I have to get up really early in the morning
No, that's fine.
to head out again. So, what you got to say, Greg?
Well, I
Oh my
just,
gosh, I want to pet that kitty.
yeah, that's a nice distraction. So I ran across this article, and it's really about Alice Walker's Meridian, which I know nothing about. But as I'm reading through here, because it was talking about grief and rage, and during the civil rights movement, and so as I started reading, I got interested in actually read the whole thing through, and I thought that it paralleled our story quite a bit, and it got me thinking, and I thought it was a good, I guess, mirror of our book, where it talked about how different people throughout that article, how different people would respond, and how it would be perceived in different ways by different people. Like that, for instance, there was some kind of brief political debate going on inside of a classroom, and one of the an African American student who in pre-med started kind of gave a verbal outburst toward a professor, and it was caught on video, and it went viral, and people were saying, "Oh gosh, how could she behave this way, this and that." And then in her article here, she talked about how it's really the result of being silent that is when people sit back and are silent, that things don't happen. Nothing happens sometimes, and so you have to step out on a limb, and that's where things like the Black Panthers and so on and so forth, how this rage comes up. And I thought that of course, you said my question here. It says that does she suggest in the novel that The Rock and the River, that sometimes rage and resistance are necessary complements to nonviolent protests when nonviolent protests are not working. So I thought that that this is a pretty different way of looking at it. So it's important, according to her, that we do these nonviolent protests, but sometimes when that doesn't work, we have to step forward and display rage or frustration, or you have to get people's attentions in different ways. And I said down here that you see the conundrum first, and in Stick, I thought that he went through this where things weren't working for him. Of course, they focused more on Sam, but you saw that struggle briefly at the beginning with Stick, and then the rest of the novel going through Sam and his being torn on what to do throughout. So I thought it was a pretty good article that tied it together. Anyhow, I enjoyed this book. I thought that the author did a really good job of playing with my emotions.
Oh man, yes, sincerely.
I really think that's a skill.
And she got it right too. Then, with if you look at this article that you brought up, she got it right about that. As you say, the conundrum that they're experiencing about when nonviolence doesn't work, when civil disobedience only doesn't work, then they have to become louder and more aggressive.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, before we close out, can I go back to a different what you were talked about at the beginning of the class? Did you say that we could change our original idea for our intro? Okay, just verifying on that.
Yep, you can change it if you want to. Okay, Jeremy.
Hello. Okay,
hello.
So, I guess we'll be real quick on this one. It's really.
You don't have to be. We've got time.
Okay. All right. So the article was very interesting for running through a lot of the things we saw in the book. The breakfast and the building, the clinics and things like that were things they specifically mentioned. But they also talked about things that were kind of left out of the book, out of the story, where some of the protests that they would have against liquor stores. Liquor stores are very prominent in low socioeconomic areas. And that if someone were coming up when they were having a protest to purchase liquor, they would give them some. They would give them wine or other alcohol to get them to come and protest with them. So protesting the very thing that they were getting. That's a little bit strange there. But I was wondering if a lot of the power that the Black Panther Party had in these communities is simply from the fact that the existing nonviolent groups were simply not meeting people's needs. Like when we think about Maslow's hierarchy, where you have the food, water, that type of thing, so breakfast being a big one there, and then the safety and security, where they're helping to protect them from police violence, belonging, here, you're part of our group now. So there's these lower level things in the hierarchy that are being met by this group that's come in, whereas the traditional or the nonviolent groups were much more in the self-actualization. You're free. What does that even mean if you're hungry?
If you're hungry, yeah. And I wonder how much the nonviolent people, I wonder what kinds of systems that they set up in communities that might have matched what the Panthers were doing in their communities. So, what were they setting up? Medical facilities, legal facilities, feeding anybody, doing any of that kind of thing. Because, the Black Panthers were directly involved in their community in that way. And that was part of their solidarity. You feed people and they'll be bound to you. And you give them these things that you meet their needs and they're going to be bound. It doesn't seem like the things that King and the other civil disobedience, following civil disobedience, they weren't putting into practice those same things that I know of. They might have been.
Right, we just haven't been.
But we've never, and that would be another story to hear about, that they did that.
I would wonder.
It's pretty.
I would wonder, since a lot of the nonviolent protesters were closely associated with church organizations, if they were simply expecting that the church organizations would take care of it, that being part of it.
Very possibly. Because that was the community period for so many of these people. You know, it's King that worked out of the churches in the first place, and you know his preaching, and so we know those churches are helping the community. I wonder too if it's a different class. I don't know. There's some things to answer in response to that. And Jill had asked something about, she'd asked, this is it. Is the spread of the Black Panther Party through community outreach a direct result of the failure of existing social organizations to address practical needs? It's very possibly that it was. Why are you doing this?
Maybe click on one of the words.
Okay, where's yours, Alex? There you are, at the very end. You get to end our evening.
So
make it good.
I kind of thought,
No pressure.
I kind of thought a lot of us were going to talk about the Black Panther Party, and I wanted to do something a little different. So I was looking at how historical events get, the word that they use is implotment, how authors make a plot out of historical events, what gets left out, what gets highlighted, how do different authors highlight different areas. And what this article was talking about is Martin Luther King's 1964 memoir, Why We Can't Wait. And then Anthony Grimm's 2001 novel, Bombingham. Both of these texts deal with the bombing of the 16th Street Church, but they approach them from different angles. I haven't read either of them, but my understanding was Bombingham was a bit more despair, like nothing's changing, all these atrocities are still happening, whereas Dr. King's novel, or memoir, was more like, yes, this terrible thing has happened, and that's why we need to keep up the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And then my question was, I think the article from Carvana's Journey talked about a lot of people have problems with fictionalizing historical atrocities.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a way, somebody is profiting from telling these stories, and it's almost certainly not the people who have been harmed.
And that's very true regarding the Holocaust.
Yeah.
That's been frequently argued as to the role.
At the same time, though, is how do you get the
How do you tell that story
out there without?
Yeah, and aestheticizing it too. That's something that's pretty frequently come up about. Well, you've written this novel about it, and novels have, or a poem, or made a painting about it, and there's some beauty to it. Is that?
Are you taken away from the despair and horror of the?
Well, folks, we are coming to the end of another one.
Halfway there.
We are? I thought we're more.
Yeah.
I thought we were more than halfway.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I'm glad that we're.
What's due next week?
Just
One Crazy Summer?
One Crazy Summer, and it's the same assignment.
So we're gonna find something, and with it in the book.
Annotated bib or something.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay. We don't. I don't
Oh yeah, no, we have a proposal.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, proposal and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I looked at it earlier too.
Also, the schedule of classes for the spring opens on Monday, the registration.
All right. And folks who are going to register for $5.95, there'll be room for you, so you don't need to worry.
I'm gonna wait and do that next fall. That way my kids
the
are
research
older.
class.
What am I looking for? I'm looking for the syllabus.
Final.
Well, how did I not get that in there? I don't know. Let's look at it.
You need your alakazam.
But you registered for that like
No,
ASAP because
That's
that thing fills up super. Like 48 hours later, it's gone. Yeah, I registered.
What class is that?
Oh, no.
What class?
599.
Yes, that was a good class. I liked that class. It was hard.
You say that
Life
now.
is a strong word.
Yeah, I didn't like it at the time, but retrospectively, I enjoyed the class.
Proposal and bid.
Yep. You want, at least that's what you've told us.
Do you need that?
Haven't we?
You've kind of already done it.
Yeah,
Okay,
right,
so-
we did that.
So we don't need to worry about training anything like that?
I don't think so. I mean,
Just so long as we
you
keep
know what you're
working
doing,
steadily
yes?
on our stuff, yes.
You know what you're doing. You know what's expected.
Okay. Yeah. Got this.
Yes, yeah, because we've kind of already done that.
Did you say that was a typo on the 3,000 words?
It is. I'm sorry, what?
Did you say that was a typo on the 3,000 words? Did I hear that?
Yes.
Did I put 300? No, I did not.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh.
Nice try.
It was supposed to be 300, right? No. 3,000. Yeah. But really, this beats writing well, you're still writing a paper.
Yeah, I was like, we're not.
But it's different. But it is different. And the process to get there has been pretty organized.
I do like your scaffolding.
Nobody taught me that, you know?
I've come to appreciate that.
All right, so everybody, next week, I'll see you then.
Go team, go.
We will.